and we are live. Good to see you on this wonderful Wednesday. Back with another edition of Mufasa's Daily Book Reading at noon. And we're still reading our Executive Coaching with Backbone and Heart, a systems approach to engaging leaders with their challenges, a book that was written by Mary Beth O'Neill. We are now in the second part of the book because it's broken up into 3 parts. Yes, and now we're in the second part of the book, part 2, which is focusing on the methodology that she uses for her coaching. And we are reading phase 2, which is the planning phase. So that's on chapter 6. You will find the previous readings in the description of this live of our YouTube channel, and also of the previous book that we read, Energy Leadership with Bruce D. Schneider. Hope that you've had a wonderful week so far, and then you've collected some gems from these readings. We're interested to find out what exactly you've learned, and if you have any questions about leadership, the books that we're reading, or about our mentoring coaching and mentoring practice, please do email us. The email is also in the description of today's live. All right, I'm going to set my time for 10 minutes and I'm going to read. All right. Okay. Phase 2, planning. Keeping the ownership with the client. Coaching should be more than an opportunity for the client to vent. To help your client create real change, you can use these planning steps. Move the client from general venting to a specific plan. Address issues inherent in change management, particularly ensuring role clarity. Help the client identify her side of the pattern in the situation. Help the client plan for the resistance she will encounter from doing something new. Although these steps seem to flow in a logical order, in practice they do not necessarily happen in the sequence. Sometimes the next action makes perfect sense until you and your client work through the implications of the roles of the key players. Then it becomes clear that some other actions need to happen first to help align everyone's roles before the planned next step can happen. Or the next step is clear until the client realizes that it would merely replay an old pattern, and some new action needs to be planned that will break through to a more effective pattern. Actually, each decision made during this planning phase needs to be double-checked against the other steps to ensure that they are fulfilling an action plan that addresses all issues embedded in these 4 steps of planning, which is really great. I love these 4 steps because I think we can use them in our families, in our organizations, teams, right, as conscious leaders. Here's another thing to keep foremost in mind. The planning phase is essentially about helping the client get emotionally prepared to face her challenge. Remember the motto for this phase: keep the ownership with the client. The client needs to come out of this planning phase not only knowing what she plans to do, but how she needs to remain persistent and determined while she is acting in new ways. Ironically, if you are not careful, the planning steps themselves can distract you and your client from this essential goal, especially if they are done in a mechanistic or wholly rational way without the client facing the anxiety about how she needs to work different in her job. During every step of this phase, help your client prepare to face her challenge by mobilizing her stamina for the plan and as she decides to put it into play. Move the client to specifics. Once the issues surface and your client chooses goals, you can help him identify an action plan and focus on his immediate next step. The path from dilemma to goal to action can be difficult for a client immersed in an issue. The clients may bog down in a variety of ways, such as avoiding specific plans, experiencing conflicted loyalties, remaining entangled in his anger at a subordinate, or fearing a conflict. In addition, he may feel overwhelmed by all the tasks required of him. Some clients feel so relieved to get their problems out of their chest that they do not move to the next step. The stress may be temporarily elevated just through conversation about the situation. Since they feel better, if only temporarily, they act as though the situation has improved. It has not. A coach does the client no favor to ignore his lack of directed action. Without a plan, the client will revisit the situation and repeat the same responses. For example, I was in a coaching conversation with Rich, a CEO who has a tendency to stay in the talk, meaning he liked talking about the situation but not doing anything about it. As he spoke about this issue, it became clear that he had a handle on it. He knew the key issues and he knew how he could contribute to it. He grasped the root causes of the difficulty and even had good ideas for the solution. But he was unwilling to focus on the uphill climb it took to change the circumstances. He never created a plan and the problem was never solved. To avoid this lack of action, you need to encourage the client to identify a specific next step. Sometimes a client can do this immediately. Other times, a client's next step will emerge from first reviewing the other three tasks of the planning roadmap from the beginning of this chapter, which were the four stages there that we read. Let me read them again. Move the client from general venting to a specific plan. Address issues inherent in change management, particularly ensuring role clarity. Help the client identify her side of the pattern in the situation. Help the client plan for the resistance she will encounter from doing something new. Any step the client chooses probably has an element of risk to it. Otherwise, he would have taken that step already and would not have needed your help to figure out what to do. Often clients try to choose a path that is devoid of risk, a very human response. Wouldn't we all rather take the easier road? But executives seldom have risk-free choices. Usually all paths have risks embedded in them. Even when the outcome is highly prized, the risk associated with the desired result can be daunting. Sinek aptly describes this dilemma by stating, "We really accept we are choosing the anxiety we'll have to deal with. We want choices without prices and solutions without anxiety. Anxiety per se isn't the problem. Anxiety is inherent in growth. The real problem is our tolerance and fear of anxiety. The real problem is our intolerance and fear of anxiety, rather." One way to help a client with risk productivity is to help him use two complementary ways to view the anxiety-provoking consequences of his decisions. The first is to look at outcomes and whether the risks taken are going to be worth the result. The second is to see the actions as an expression of who the client is, and he accepts the accompanying risks. An example of the second perspective could be a client who decides, I know it's risky, but I can no longer go along with the group on this one. I want to become the kind of person who can tell the boss all the pros and cons and not protect her from bad news. I may be the only one, but it's more of who I want to be and the way I want to do it. When clients make a decision based on both of these ways of weighing risks, by outcomes and by defining who they are becoming, they can more readily stand behind their actions, tolerate the strain of their own anxiety, and accept the consequences of those actions, whether the outcomes are in their favor or not. It is when clients try to avoid all negative consequences that they are left with indecisiveness and indecisiveness and under-optimized results. A client's plan therefore needs to use the most challenging level of action that the system and the client can tolerate. Thank you so much. That concludes our reading for today. This was definitely about building a risk appetite. So I hope you enjoyed the reading and you'll be using the four stages of real change, of how to help your client you how to help your client create real change. And those are: move the client from general venting to a specific plan, address issues inherent in change management, particularly ensuring role clarity, help the client identify her side of the pattern in the situation, help the client plan for the resistance she will encounter from doing something new. And remember that you are a conscious leader, and by starting to use these readings and the gems in this book on yourself, it will be easy for you to translate that information and those actions into your other relationships and engagements as well. Thank you so much for watching today's live. I will see you on Friday.